Hi there, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is the place where we talk about all things writing for writers and by writers, and we're really glad you're joining here live. We've got quite a few of them in the chat room with us today, and if you're watching us on the replay, we're glad you're with us today. We are excited about today's topic and our special guest. My name's Jean Wise. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined today by our whole entire co-hosting team. We got Johnny Alexander and Bethany Jett. And I'm going to turn it over to Johnny right away to introduce our topic today and our special guest, because we're glad you're with us. So, Johnny, it's all yours.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to introduce our special guest. Diana Flegal is with us. Diana is an agent with the Hartline Literary Agency. Diana and I met at the Florida Christian Writers Conference several years ago. It was like 2010, 2009, maybe. I'm not even for sure when. And she was part of an agents panel. And during that agents panel, she said something like, "Please do not tell me that God wants you to give your proposal to me." And so when I sat down in front of her for our 15-minute appointment, I said, "God did not tell me to give my proposal to you, but I'm going to show it to you anyway." So we just kind of hit it off, and she did like my proposal, but she was very involved with some other things right then. So she handed my proposal off to her colleague at the time, Tamla Hancock Murray, who then called me and offered representation. So I really feel like Diana was very instrumental in my writing journey, because she got me to that place where I had an agent to represent me. So I am just always so grateful to her for that, and I tell her thank you all the time. So since then, our paths have crossed at other conferences and retreats. Diana has been an agent for about 11 years. She tells in her bio what she represents, but we're going to let her talk about that. When she's not reading submissions or stealing away with a recreational read, she is hiking in the mountains or kayaking the many lakes of her home state, North Carolina. Now, she did not say this in her bio, but I remember when we were at a retreat together in the Blue Ridge, that she said when she moved to North Carolina, the first thing she did was look for a church. And the second thing she did was look for a sports bar that would play the football games of some team who's, I don't even remember the name of the team.
That is correct. That is correct.
What team was it?
I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler girl. I bleed black and gold. Yes, ma'am.
I thought that was so funny. So first the church, and then Pittsburgh Steelers fan base in North Carolina. Those were
right. I've got my priorities right. Nobody can fault me on that.
That's right. So we're going to talk today about writing convincing fiction, or not fiction. Sorry, that's my thing. Nonfiction, convincing nonfiction, compelling nonfiction, and just Diana, we're just going to turn it over to you and see what tips you have to make that a winning proposal to give to an agent or to an editor that we might meet at a conference where they will just not be able to refuse a nonfiction.
Remind me how much time we have. What's our time frame?
We got started a little late, maybe about 40 minutes, and then we will bring, at some point, we'll bring everybody else on. If you have questions in the chat, we encourage that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. The reason I titled this topic Writing Convincing Nonfiction is because there's several levels of people that you have to convince. First, you have to convince the editor or agent of some things, and the most important thing about your nonfiction is you have to convince your reader that they need your book. Are you meeting a felt need? In nonfiction, it is all about your reader and meeting a need, making a promise to them, and then fulfilling that promise. So many times people will have an idea for nonfiction, but it would be an idea better suited for a magazine article or a blog series. It really isn't enough. When you get down and dig deep, it's just not enough for a whole book. So that's something that people don't realize. You know, they have a great idea, and it's just how do you stretch that idea out to really hit a 40,000 to 60,000 word count. You know, sometimes you find you start and then it peters out. Well, then you realize this would make a great blog series, you know, or you can pull out certain segments of it and present that to online magazines and print magazines for articles. So that's one of the first considerations. But the biggest thing in convincing a publisher, I think nonfiction writers have the largest challenge in writing today, because it's all about platform. And we hear that word and we don't like that word, but it is a word that is not going away. As publishers downsize and you know, their finances get strained, they need an author that can come alongside them and really help promote and sell their work. So it's all about platform. It's all about your areas of influence. And, you know, we're finding that for fiction writers as well. The best way to sell a book that you've already written and convince readers they need it is to meet them face to face. So even fiction writers, we're asking them to really seek out speaking opportunities where they can get in front of readers, you know, storytelling events. Just find ways to tell stories, because that's what a fiction writer is, a storyteller. So throwing that out there for you fiction writers. And
hard.
yes. I know we're always asking more of you, and believe me, we're doing that. We're asking that of ourselves as well. I cannot tell you, if you take what an agent does within a day and break it into pie pieces, so much of our time is spent researching things for our clients, then imputing that knowledge to the client, spreading it out, learning more about marketing, how to promote the books that we've already sold, how do we help find the readers, and then just a small percent is selling, you know. And it's a constant juggling, because you need to sell to be able to pay your bills, but yet you have to, once you sell a book, you have to find the reader for the book. So it's a challenging industry, but so we're all being pushed to excel and to, you know, constantly grow. And
Diana, have you seen it
go ahead.
like, well, in the last like 5 or 6 years, how has your job changed, or has there been a change?
Yes, that's the biggest change, is I have got to constantly promote and market my clients. Just this morning, I sent out, and this is a little thing for the fiction authors. Today is the Faith, Hope, Love contest is opened for submission.
Oh,
so you want to get your submission in to the Faith, Hope, Love. That's the Romance Writers of America has a contest for inspirational fiction. And so that contest opened, and you want to make sure you enter these contests that, again, even if you don't win the contest, the participants are posted, and people outside of your areas of influence might find out about you and say, ooh, I would like to read that book. So definitely we're looking for things like that to share. So back to the convincing nonfiction. So you have an idea, and unfortunately, we're going to play devil's advocate when we have those 15-minute appointments at conferences. The biggest thing we're there to do is help really challenge you. Are you the right one to be writing this book? You know, what makes you an expert on this topic? And unfortunately, in today's economy, just having lived the experience is not enough to validate that you're the expert to write about it. And that kind of makes me sad, because life experience, I think, is something that I think it's scriptural, that the things that we go through and the things that we endure are meant for us then to help others in similar situations. But the people that hold the purse strings at the publishers want experts. speaking on certain topics. So if you're not an expert, if you just have the life experience, then I challenge people to submit that to the Lord and see if you aren't meant to become an expert. Take the college courses, become the expert, to then have more validity to share the things that God's downloaded to you about a certain thing. You know, if it's you've gone through a divorce and you have a heart now to want to mentor other women going through a divorce, come alongside them, that is a worthy goal. I mean, it's so needed. So what can you do to accomplish that goal? Break it down into actionable steps. T.D. Jakes said, I love quoting other people. That's why I hang out with you writers. I assimilate your knowledge and I take it and share it with other people. But he put it so succinctly. He just said, an idea without action equals frustration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, we get these many ideas, but we have to break it down and find actionable steps to ways to put it into book form, form your chapters, and that's what our goal is. Did you anybody have any questions at this point?
I had a comment, actually.
Okay.
I love what you said about the promise to the reader with nonfiction, and I found, so I'm excited to hear what you think about this as well, because you read so many of them. Because when you're writing nonfiction, you have that overall promise to your reader, but then in each chapter, when we're doing chapter breakdowns, it's almost like you have to say, this chapter now promises to tell the reader this. So that way, if they pick up any part of that book and only read a couple chapters, they have to be able to get the overall takeaway plus that chapter's takeaway. So it's like a 2-part promise almost.
Exactly.
15-part promise.
It is. No, it is. You are right. Bethany, one of my favorite jewels that in my, you guys would laugh. If you saw my coffee table and how many books are stacked there with bookmarks in them, you would just how. I mean, I am constantly just devouring information. But one of the books that I used to teach on this nonfiction writing workshop is Jean Marie Stein's book. And she quotes, or she said, reminded us of this old journalistic rule, this old rule in journalism. And it is that first you tell the people what you're going to tell them. Then you tell them. And then you tell them what you just told them. She said you're going to use that rule as your overall book, which gives you your larger promise, Bethany, like you said. But then you're going to use it in each chapter.
Yeah.
And each chapter then is going to really just fall into place because you're going to know what is it that you wanted to share. So that is an excellent observation that you just made. It's true. In nonfiction, you have a major promise, but each chapter are bite-sized promises.
They are.
Something that you take away.
I have a question.
Sure.
I kind of did that with one of my books, and I was told I was reiterating too much.
Well, there's a fine line there, and you'll learn to dance that line. There is a fine line, and there are certain publishers that don't want that type of nonfiction. So, but I think for writing it and getting it down, that is such a good rule to kind of walk between and have as your boundaries and parameters, and then play with it. You know, so it will be particular to each publishing house. Some, as you notice, like certain authors, Max Lucado, Philip Yancey, they're more conversational in their nonfiction, whereas others are, like John Maxwell will be bullet point, you know, make his bullet points. And it really is finding your voice and then finding the publisher that works with your voice. But I think as far as a reader, I love when I can just grab a book and each chapter gives me a takeaway, you know. And the truth is, if you go to your bookshelf, and this disturbed me, you guys, I was shocked at this. I heard somebody at a keynote at a writers conference say, most nonfiction titles are never completed. And I said, oh, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. That's ludicrous. I couldn't wait to get home. I got home. I have vast amounts of books, fiction and nonfiction. It's criminal. But anyways, I pulled nonfiction books, my favorites, off the shelf, and literally had a bookmark in every one of them. I had not completed them. They said most readers will take and read up to the point where they get something, and then they'll run with that.
Yes. I do that.
Yep.
I do that as a reader. I do.
Yeah.
On that. Hey, Rebecca had a question a while back, and I don't want to miss it.
I was looking for it too.
Yeah. It said she was asking about, when you were talking about utilizing your stuff, and be sure if it's a magazine or
right.
She put up how can you pull things out of your nonfiction book and pitch them to smaller venues like magazines without giving away too much before it's published? That kind of fine line between that. I don't know if you can go into that before it's published. Yeah. I can see after it's published to help promote it, market it, but even before, when maybe you're trying to research and expand and get that conversation going, that might give you more information for your or more insight, more depth to your nonfiction book, but yet you don't want to give the whole thing away either. You want it still to be a unique idea. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, and that again, Rebecca, that is an excellent question, because we are always asking our clients, especially when a book is about to launch, to build that anticipation for the book, and you often do it by speaking engagements and by magazine articles or blogs, and that will depend on your publisher. You definitely want to always check with your publisher what they allow, how much content they allow you to share, but most publishers will encourage you. So I would say it's a topic of let me pick one that I'm looking at right now. Okay, say it's a book on depression, and in that book you have 5 different chapters on ways of little tips for overcoming depression, and the one might be to join a meetup group. You might talk about meetup groups, and then just say there's more about just the advantages, what the benefits of a meetup group, that it's a social activity, you meet new friends, but you get to engage in an activity safely. I'm single. I love to hike. It is not wise for me to go hiking up in these mountains by myself. So I have contacted meetup groups that hike, and they hike at different levels of expertise. So that would be a wonderful article then, and yet it complements what you're writing about in your larger piece. Do you see where I'm saying? So you're going to take a portion of the idea and run with that. That's the best way to always, because then you're not really sharing content word for word. I hope that helps, Rebecca. Good. She said,
I love that example. Yeah, that's a great example. And I love, too, that you do that, because I would be scared to death with people I had not even met before. So,
well, when you live alone, you're driven to desperation sometimes just to connect with people, because, it's wonderful to work at home in your pajamas, but, it's isolation, and I'm an extrovert, so I know for some of you that's more comfortable. A lot of writers are introverts, but I'm an extrovert. I need people, so I love conference season. Sherilyn, and many of you know me at conferences. I'm just kind of like,
yeah, you're wonderful. You're so amazing.
Well, it's because you guys just life me,
I'm just like you are, Diana. I'm the same way at the conferences. I'm like,
Good. I'm glad. Yeah.
I always need you guys around me. Like, if it gets too small talky, I'm like, I'm looking for you guys. Like, where's my extroverts? Like, come here. So,
So they can talk and you can just stand there and nod. Yeah.
I'm either talking or taking notes because you guys have a lot to offer. So
Yeah.
one way, like, okay, so I want to take what you just said about depression and about hiking, and then one way to become an expert in that area, or at least for people to see that way on your social media that week or for your blog, then you should come up with tips, like research some hiking magazines or bloggers that are really big and quote them in your blog. And then basically every blog post could be a resource list for people on the topic, because then,
excellent.
and I say this all the time, people come to you because you're the one who gives them all the information, and then they get to go look at all these other people, but they come back to you because they know you're going to give them good stuff. And that's one way to become a resource expert, just always sharing that, because it makes you look like the expert because you know who to talk to.
Exactly. And that's what we're constantly, blogs have just kind of reached a saturation point. But the blogs that offer good content like that, Bethany, are the ones that we will continue to keep going to. And thank goodness for us, we write in a niche, most of us. If we're giving writing advice or anything, that's a constant need. So we're pretty safe with people they're going to keep accessing our blogs. But yes, definitely be a resource that people can touch back to. And it benefits you because you're gaining all that. That's the thing. I have all this in my head. And then there's different moments I get to deliver a morsel here or a morsel there. But I'm the beneficiary of researching things for my clients. It blesses me. My cup gets full and I'm inspired.
Yeah, that's great you do that, because I don't know that all agents do that. I mean, it seems to me, as I've met different ones, there's different agents who do different kinds of things, and I think that's a blessing for your clients that you'll take the time.
Thank you. I hope they're happy.
I'm sure they are. Well, I don't want to get way off track on what you've outlined to give us, but we did have a question about voice. Sherilyn asked about how important is voice in nonfiction compared to other elements. So
I think it's very important. I do. I think there's a style of delivery, and I gravitate to certain voices in nonfiction, definitely. But I benefit from them all, but I gravitate to the ones that I tend to quote are the ones that impact me the most, and they would be the voice that's most relatable to me. That totally depends on your personality, but yeah, voice is very important. Like I said, John Maxwell, he's a leadership expert. He speaks to CEOs and corporations, and so his information is very bullet point, deliver actionable steps. And then if you have somebody like John Maxwell, he's almost a narrative nonfiction. He'll interweave story and life experience. And T.D. Jakes, same way. He's a poet to me. He just he's a wordsmith. He can paint word pictures that just, stop you. And I'll tell you truthfully, I hang around with you all because I think certain things, but you all give me words for how I feel, for what I'm thinking. You give me words that I can then express myself in, and that's a wonderful thing. So yes, voice, I think, is very important, very important. I just had a conversation with a client before this time together, and I had offered some editorial suggestions, and then I said, are you working with an editor? Are you doing this editing yourself? And she said, I'm working with an editor, but her style is not the same as your style. And I told her, I said, well, make the most of my suggestions, but you pick the style you're most comfortable in. I said, I don't want to mess with your style, but I want you to consider my suggestions. So it's very important to maintain voice in fiction and nonfiction. So there you go, another great question. Great question.
Great questions.
And I think the more you write, the more your voice slowly emerges. You know, if I look how I wrote 10 years ago compared to now, and I've said blogging has been one of the best things for me to find my voice.
Gina, I was just going to say that blogging is so key for a nonfiction writer. And for a fiction writer, it really helps you tighten your writing. Do you notice that? It tightens your writing because you're writing these short elements. But yeah, for a nonfiction writer, to me, voice, and also I believe there's a book out called Blogging Your Book. You will find what resonates with your readers. Note what, but you know, like, did you ever write a blog and you thought it was amazing? You were so excited to post it, and then it's just crickets.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the heck? I just thought that was like gonna, you know.
And then the opposite occurs. You write one because I got to come up with something. It's Tuesday, and you just throw something up there, and that's when you get a ton of shares and a ton of comments on. You think, what is this coming from?
Well, right there means you've touched on a felt need.
Yeah.
Make a note. Make a note. I always tell bloggers, go back in, look at the blogs that receive the most comments. There you might have a book. You at least have an article for a magazine. You definitely have something that has touched on a felt need. So that's, pause there and really consider if there's an opportunity to develop that material into something larger.
Something else. You know, when you were talking about voice, several of us were at Florida Christian Writers Conference and heard Robert Benson a couple years ago, who writes like a poet, you know.
Yes.
And I'm rereading several of his books this year. Yeah, there's the one, Dancing on the Head of a Pen. But I'm rereading several of his books on prayer this year, because it's the year of prayer on my blog. And I can hear him, you know, having heard him in person. It's like he's in the room with me, you know. So he is, his speaking presentation is also his writing, which doesn't always happen, you know, but it's like he's right here in the, I can hear his pauses and his intonations, and how he speaks is in his writing. It's just,
it's that influence.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the influence he's had on you, you know, and I think that, and I'm going to screw this quote up, but, you know, we are the summation of those that have gone before us.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know who I've read has influenced me. You know, I just am so grateful. Yeah. And, you know, there's times we all get discouraged. Agents, writers, we get discouraged. I walk into a Barnes and Noble and I think, why do we need one more book in the world? You know, who am I to think I have a book that, you know, a client that's book needs to be on the shelf, and you get overwhelmed. But if you bring it down, I think of all the little, the individuals that have, you know, stayed the course and persevered and wrote that book that touched my life. I'm just so grateful. You know, I'm so grateful. And the awesome thing about attending writers' conferences, I just want to give a pitch for writers' conferences. The value and the friendships and the networking is so important, because our lives are collaborative effort. I mean, it really is an overlay of portions that we receive from one another that make us who we are and give us, you know, material to take forward. But writers' conferences, I mean, I remember reading a book and opening up to see who the agent was, because I wanted to write the agent a note and just say thank you for getting this book published, because wow, it just helped me immeasurably. And it was Blythe Daniels. And I was like, I know Blythe. I could write to her. I have her email, you know. Yeah. And I was just so excited to be able to write to her and say to her, thank you, Blythe, you know, for championing this book through to the publisher, because it changed my life. And that's what writers' conferences do, you know. It's just such a value, such a
sweet idea. I never thought of that, but I'm going to pay attention to that from now on. Write a thank you to the agent and say, yeah, that's great.
That's great idea.
I've never heard that.
No, I haven't either.
Well, and here, let's remind everybody again, if you read a book that you loved, don't forget to write that Amazon review for it. Just 2 sentences. It is so helpful for other people to find the book in those search engines, right, Bethany? we've got to, entice those search engines and get the book up, up at the top of the pond instead of in the murky water down below. And reviews help writers.
It's gold. It's gold to the author.
It is.
It really is. Hey, Bethany, do you want to say what you just put in the chat room? I think that'd be an interesting conversation, or get Diane's take on that.
Yeah, it was my book had just gotten picked up. Like, it passed through the board. We had a contract, and the editor that I met at a conference did an hour phone call with me, which is, I know every editor is different, I know. But he had done a critique of the 3 chapters. And one thing that he told me, he said, I can tell where this sounds really good as a speaker. Like, you would sound really good saying this from the stage if you were teaching this chapter, but it doesn't translate well written word. And he said, so you need to watch that. So when I'm writing first drafts, usually it's how I would write it if I was speaking at an event. And then I have to go back through, and it takes the preachiness away. I have to conversationalize it. I use a lot of contractions now because it makes it less like cannot instead of can't, So that was the best advice ever. And it really helped me pay attention. If it sounds like something good I could say from the stage in like a tweetable format, I probably need to expand it and explain it. So that is
excellent. Did you say it just got picked up?
It was my first book.
Congratulations. Yeah. Well, that was, and again, there's somebody to write a thank you note to, that editor that took the time to have that conversation with you. There are certain times we just see something in somebody, and I have a client now, her book is in its final editorial process. I saw her 2 years ago, and I mean, probably anybody else would have said, rejected the material, but I started the conversation with her, and I said, you have something here. And I referred her to an editor. The editor worked with her, and really got her focused. She just had a slew of weed words, a slew of this, but every once in a while a sentence that was just like, oh, so it was so fun because it took us 3 years, but now her book will be out in 2018. So, and it's a parenting book, but she just had a fresh way of looking at parenting that made you laugh out loud, and it was just so wonderful. But sometimes you just have to take that time. So that's wonderful, Bethany. That's beautiful. Somebody asked a question, how do you tell the difference? I think when you're speaking, I'm going to ask you a question, Bethany. When you're speaking, do you find that for you the difference between the writing and the speaking, when you're speaking, you can get a little more vulnerable and personal with your audience, whereas when you're writing a book, you need to come across as the expert?
Yes.
I think that's like when you're speaking, you're more the girlfriend, where you're writing the book, you're more the expert. Is that kind of where you were seeing that lying?
I absolutely agree with that in parts. And then I also think the reverse is true too. I think I can be harsher in person speaking to stage because I'm not really that harsh anyway, but I've already pulled them in and I can smile at them, or I can say something sarcastic because they can see my face. Whereas if you're writing that sentence, you have to cover it.
That's a good point. Yes. Yeah.
So both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's that balance again. Things that are appropriate to speaking wouldn't necessarily translate into the writing. But and I find too, it's the rearranging of paragraphs sometimes.
Yes, Mom.
Really?
Best editing tip ever, actually, is just move the sentence to the top. You're like, oh, it's perfect.
Exactly, and there it is. Bam, you got it. Yes, and I've had the privilege of editing some pastors' blogs here and there, I've been working with pastors on their books, and that's the major thing. It's just the rearranging of the material that I find that just helps it to really just, sing. And I think because when you're speaking, you can kind of go off on a rabbit trail and bring your audience back. But you can't do that when you're writing. You've got to really, because again, there's that bookmark in the book, and the book's closed. They're not going to open it up sometimes, you know. Again. So you can't lose them on rabbit trails. Like when you're face to face, you can bring somebody back a little bit. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Well, we got it's about 10 of, so we can invite everybody back in if they want to come on back in. Those of you, and we say each week, sometimes if you can't come back in, write it in the chat, because sometimes we have to, as hosts and co-hosts, allow you to invite you in. So put it in the chat if for some reason you can't come back in, because we have something we have to click sometime. But it looks like we had over 20 participants at one point.
Yeah, that's great.
Here, hi, Vicki.
Such a good chat.
Hi.
Rebecca had a couple questions about multimedia and scripture verses, so I was going to let her
start
with that question, and then anybody else can answer that.
Go for it, Rebecca.
Thanks. Well, my book has a whole lot of scripture. I'm actually doing lessons with it, and a lot of the scripture is familiar, so I have put it. I have put it on video, and it's really helping the people. I'm watching their faces as they process it. They're right into it, and so I was just wondering if there's ever a market for multimedia with the book.
That is something that a lot of publishers are asking for the nonfiction writer. They're looking for writers that definitely feel comfortable with doing live chats, with doing things, Zoom chats like we're doing right now, that have YouTube channels, active YouTube channels. So that is all part of what the publisher's looking for now. So those are the challenges. I love that Series Writer Academy challenged me to learn how to use Zoom and how to record and I had to learn to sit still, because you see I want to go, and I know that's not something
I understand that, Diana. I watched some of my previous genre chats, and I'm like this because I'm so excited. I'm like, I just sit still.
You know, and
people crazy.
Yeah, you'll give somebody a seizure, you know. And so there's, but yes, definitely, Rebecca, that is something publishers are looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Who else has a question?
Tina, did you have any questions or comments you wanted to make?
I really appreciate you going through this and breaking it down. This was great. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad. It's a large topic, so, you know, we didn't cover everything, but at least hopefully we hit on some things that would be helpful.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad.
Well, since
I'm writing my book proposal, and what you said and Bethany said about I'm working on the chapter breakdown and about mentioning the point and just bringing it all together and reiterating and having a takeaway in each chapter. I never thought of that. I just thought, I'll just say what the chapter's about. But always putting the takeaway is what they want. Isn't that what got us in Chicken Soup for the Soul?
That's exactly
having the takeaway.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, we have in this society a lot of bathroom readers, people that keep the book in the bathroom, and that's as long as you get, folks. You just get an audience for that short time they're in the bathroom, because you know, we just live in such a compressed you know, our time is so precious. So
media too. That's when people are tweeting, Instagramming, like a few minutes without children.
On that. Diana, I'm wondering what are you seeing the publishers asking you for an agent, that they say, I wish somebody would write a book about, or we have way too many of this, but we really would like to see this. Can you give us an inside scoop a little bit?
Well, there's certain things that publishers look for every year. Every publisher that is strong in nonfiction publishing wants the perennials. They want a book on parenting, a book on marriage or relationships. They want a book on a social justice issue. So if you can write fresh and well on a social justice issue, they're looking for that. But again, you've got to be excellent to make it into nonfiction publishing. And the reason is there's so much free content online.
Yep.
For, everybody's blogging, so you can find blogs on every topic you're interested in, the political blogs, the economic blogs, the relationship blogs, So for you to convince a publisher that your book is worthy of publication, you've really got to have a fresh perspective. And, it's one of the things we hear as agents all the time is fresh. We want something fresh. And you're like, what does that mean? But I think the key is just taking a topic and just tweaking it, shifting it, so we have a fresh look at it. And that's something our nation needs right now, is to give us fresh perspective on different viewpoints, and let us look at that and let it challenge us to step up and be better because we understand something in a way we haven't understood it before. That's the value of a powerful nonfiction.
I have a question for you, and it kind of has to do with nonfiction, but it's more general. What if you have a publisher that you really, really want, and you pitch it to your agent? How does that work?
Well, are you saying you mean you have a preferred publisher you would like to be published with? Well, as agents, we know if that publisher would be a match for your material. And if it would be, then I will gladly go there first. Absolutely. We would definitely try to match you with the best publisher for your material.
Thanks. All right.
Any other questions? Robin, are you waving or do you have a question?
She's
said bye. Okay, sorry.
I have a question. I have a question for you. What are the top 3 things that you look for in a book proposal, a nonfiction book proposal?
Nonfiction?
Yeah, top 3 things that you look for in the nonfiction book proposal.
A relevant topic that meets a specific felt need. So that means the author, the writer knows their audience. They know who their reader is. They've nailed their target audience. And then I'm looking for the platform, unfortunately. And then I'm looking at the writing.
Okay.
So it's those 3 things.
Can I quote you?
Pardon?
Can I quote you?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'm actually writing an article. Can I quote you? I'll email you, make sure I get
Oh, that's fine, yes.
It's for almost an author, but that's what I just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page with what I was thinking.
Yes.
Because people don't like the platform part. They don't like that, but it's not us specifically. Don't crucify the agent. It's the publishers.
No, we can love something. We can love something, and even the editor at a publishing house can love it. But they say, Diana, give me everything you can to help me get this through committee. Give me everything possible that you can think of. Brainstorm with the writer and just come up with every possible marketing way we can promote this book. And then they take it and still can't get it through. Mm-hmm. One thing I'll leave you with, you have to realize, even in the Christian publishing market, it's the people, the final decisions are made by the people that hold the purse strings. Mm-hmm. And it's a business. Mm-hmm. And it's all on return for investment. It's a great investment to publish a book. I know 10 years ago when I started, they said something in the ballpark of $75,000 to get a book to the shelf. Well, can you imagine what it costs now? So they have got to, and that's what a proposal does. It convinces a publisher to invest in you. And that's why it's so important. And that's why we're anal about getting all that material in a proposal, is because we're convincing a publisher to invest in you.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of the hour. We've got one more question, a couple more things we want to say. So here's the question. Is there a typical numeric cutoff for platform numbers? So what kind of numbers are you looking for in a platform?
Boy, they vary. I guess the point I look at two things when I look at platform numbers. I look at how long you've been developing your platform. I mean, if you tell me you've been blogging for 10 years and you only have 3,000 followers, that kind of tells me you're not meeting a felt need with your platform and it needs adjusted. But if you tell me you've only been, you know, out there three months and you've already got 3,000 followers, that's encouraging. That means you have something that people want to hear. So it all depends on that time frame. But I know with publishers, about 4 years ago, they told me on previous sales of books, even people that have their second book and are trying to get a contract, that they want 10,000 in book sales at the least, and that's in a short period of time. So that's probably six months period of time. They want you to have had 10,000 sales on a previous book. So those are some tough numbers in today's market. But as far as blog, like I said, tweeting and all of that, it would depend on how long your platform's been up. But I would love to see somebody that's had a platform for maybe 2 years and they're at 10,000 followers on their blog, or, you know, at least between 6 and 10. But if something takes my breath away, I'll fight for you, even with small numbers.
I love it.
Okay, Bethany has a quick question too, and I also think a short commercial.
I say on the record that Diana teaches this class in the academy, and I put the link in here, Serious Writer Academy /Diana-Flegal, and it's great. So if you want more, you can get it there. And then Diana, my question was, for the nonfiction book proposal, how detailed should that target audience be? Because that was like your number one thing, was the relevant information for that target audience. How targeted are agents looking for and publishers?
Well, the more defined it is, the more I know you know your reader. So because it really is about you as a writer knowing who you're writing for. So you're going to have your specific target, and then you're going to break it down to secondary targets. So you're going to, you know, if you're talking on divorce, women divorce, you're going to break that down to ages, say, 26 to 40. But then you're going to have secondary audiences of, you know, the person twice divorced, the person, you know, you're going to just keep breaking it down into specifics. And it is really key for us to know, you know, your audience.
That's great. Well, I think it's about time for us to wrap up. It's getting close to it's past the top of the hour.
It has been so much fun, ladies.
It goes so fast. And this has been wonderful information. We thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Can you just tell us real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Jeannie to talk about next week's Writer's Chat. Tell us real quick, Diana, what you're looking for. If people have proposals to send to you, what do you want? What do you want to see?
All right. I am looking for Christian living titles that really address social justice issues in a way that would bring two sides together. We just need more dialogue that way, so I'm constantly looking for that person that can stand in the gap and do that kind of reconciliation between two opposing views. I'm also looking for the perennials, you know, a good book on parenting, a good book on marriage relationships. Always looking for things for the single person. But also, I'm looking for strong male voices as well that speak to issues. I know Kyle Young, agent and founder of Almost an Author, and now working with Bethany and Serious Writer Academy. He has written a book on fatherhood, and in his lighthearted, fun, awesome way. And I was just glad to hear that just got picked up by a publisher. So, I mean, we're always looking for that kind of thing that comes alongside and just helps us walk out our journey. So, and to say it's someone who understands what platform means.
Yeah.
and what it is and what they have to do, the work that it's going to, entail.
That's great.
Okay.
Today has been just wonderful.
Well, good. I'm glad.
Thank you, Diana.
And I just kind of just feel re-energized, to
Good.
get to work this
Good.
afternoon. So that's great. So we invite normally, and we'll say this so Diana knows, everybody stays on after we quit recording for just a few minutes, and we just do we call it the after party. So we
Okay.
those of you that are live to stay on here after party. And I do want to, while we're still recording, to tell you what next week's Writers Chat will be about. We're excited to have one of Rebecca's friends, Angeline Woodard, to be with us, and I love her description of herself. She has a real heart for learning to love things you hate. So that's very appropriate for Valentine's week next week. And she's a blogger and a writer, and she does some work with social media. So we're going to have a talk along that idea, and we'll get to know her. So it'll be somebody new that we'll get to know next week on that. So I am excited. So we're glad Rebecca brought her into our fold next week. So we'll get to know her on that way. And thank you for being with us today, everybody, both live and if you're
Yes,
watching.
thank you.
Thank you. And if you're watching the replay, join us every Tuesday at 11 o'clock Eastern here on Writers Chat. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.